I was having dinner with my daughter at a restaurant in New York City the other day, and she made a comment. She said, "Dad, people on your channel don't know you." I said, "They don't know me? Of course they know me." And I started to rattle off my credentials: CPA, MBA, registered Social Security analyst, 25 years on Wall Street, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she stopped me and she said, "Dad, that's not what I'm talking about. They don't know you personally. For example, do they know that you took your family apple picking last weekend in upstate New York? Or that you set your New Year's resolutions every single month to make sure that you're achieving them?" And I said, "Well, no, of course not. That doesn't help them get from where they are to where they want to go." To which she said, "Not every single thing that you do is about goal achievement. And I think that your viewers might be the same way." I said to her, "I see your point. Maybe we'll try it, but I don't think they'll really care if I went apple picking with my family or not. But what they might be interested in are things that I've stopped doing that have changed my life. It certainly made my life more simple. And so that's what this video is all about. 6 things that I quit to simplify my life." The first is overcommitment. I found myself up until about 3 months ago really focused on getting as much into every single day as I possibly could. The problem is that around the edges, things didn't work well. For example, I had a meeting that ended at 1:30, and I had another one that started at 2 across town, and it was a 25-minute drive. Now, I was confident I could get there by 2, but I didn't account for the fact that it takes a bit of time to get to the car and from the car to the meeting location, and there might be traffic along the way. I got there eventually and walked into the meeting at 2:10. I thought that was a bit of a gift given everything that's going on. So now I add an additional buffer between meetings and actually take out a lot of stuff that's not really required during the day, or I can have someone else do. Next, I stopped trying to make everything that I did 100% perfect. Now, don't get me wrong, there are times where something needs to be 100% perfect. If you're a brain surgeon, you kind of need it to be pretty close to, if not 100% perfect. But most of the time, if you get it approximately right, that will be good enough for most situations. It's the difference between getting the gift correct and getting the wrapping paper correct. If you get the gift correct, the wrapping paper, which often takes as much time for some people, will be thrown out eventually anyway, so just work on getting the gift right. Now I follow the 80-20 principle, which basically means that 80% of an outcome comes from 20% of the work. And ironically, what I found is in those situations, the other 80% actually gets done by somebody somewhere in the chain anyway, so the outcome is basically the same. Next, I quit engaging in time-wasting activities. Now let me explain what that means. In any given day, you'll do things that really don't advance the ball, at least with your objectives or mine. What's a time waster for you might not be a time waster for me, and vice versa. But for me, identifying what's important is job 1. And then you know what activities, or I know what activities are not time wasters and what activities are time wasters. If I was a psychologist and someone wanted to talk to me about their personal problems in the office, that would be a good thing. If I'm a business person running a company and somebody wants to talk to me about their personal problems, that's probably not a good thing, at least not in mass. Occasionally you have to deal with personal issues, but if it becomes part of the DNA of the company, well, all sorts of bad things happen, particularly legally, I would imagine. Now I make a list of 3 mission-critical things I need to get done every single week, and those are definitely not the time wasters. Next, I've made a concerted effort to stop focusing on things that I can't control. Case in point, I have a friend who's extremely political. Now, for those of you who know this channel, you know the mantra in this channel is that we're not political. It's not a political channel. The only politics we follow are those that help the viewer. And in this case, most people at or entering retirement or in retirement. If it helps someone in those categories, we're for it. If it doesn't, well, probably not. But not everybody is like that. So my friend and I were having lunch the other day, and he was very stressed out. Apparently, he's been watching the 24-hour news networks for 3, 4, 5 hours a day sometimes because he's consumed with politics. I said to him, "Why would you do that?" He said, "Because I want to stay informed with what's going on." I said, "I get it, but you can stay informed by watching the news networks for 10 minutes a day or reading the newspaper the next day. Why several hours?" And he said something that we all have thought from time to time, not necessarily with this particular issue, but with issues in general. And that is, if we stop paying attention, things will go the wrong way. It's the classic baseball fan syndrome. If I don't wear my jersey from 1972 or whatever the year that you acquired the jersey, if I don't wear that specific jersey when my team is playing baseball, then they're going to lose. Of course, that's not true. And the same holds true with politics. If you watch the news for 3 or 4 hours a day, it's not going to change the outcome of the election. Your vote might, although in New York it's less likely. If you vote one way versus the other, the outcome's probably going to be the same, but you never know. But the point is, obsessing over something for 3 or 4 hours that you can't actually control by obsessing over it is just a waste of time, and it's something that I've intentionally stopped doing. Next, I've stopped neglecting sleep. I found over the years that I often will push into the evening, even into the late evening, to get something done because, as I said earlier, there just are only so many hours in a day. But by quitting time-wasting activities, I am actually able to get to bed at a much more normal hour, and I've been doing that now pretty religiously for about 12 months. I will say that on the other end, I get up earlier than normal, which is great because I get a lot more done in the early hours than I would be getting done if I stayed in bed for another hour or two. And importantly, I make sure that this is on the other room, still accessible in case I get that emergency phone call that fortunately hasn't happened yet, knock on wood, but it could, I suppose. But I have deleted all of the mindless games except for 2 because, well, there's only so much a man can take. Next, I've taken a lot of steps to reduce or eliminate information overload. For example, on my phone, I've turned off the news feeds. On my computer, I'm very deliberate on what I will look at and read and make sure that I don't click the link which takes you to another link, which takes you to another link. And I spend most of my time doing the work that I need to do, but not really surfing at all. By the way, if you want a good book on how to manage your information, there's one called Building a Second Brain. It's an excellent book. I'm not affiliated with the book or the author at all. I don't receive any compensation for mentioning the name, but it does do a wonderful job of helping us tame that computer in our head that doesn't come with an owner's manual. The book gave a frightening statistic. It said that we human beings receive the equivalent of 174 newspapers worth of information every single day. 10 years ago, it was just a tiny fraction of that number, but it's gone up geometrically because of this and this right here. Between the computer and an iPhone or Samsung, whatever phone you use, the information is almost automatic, which is why, for example, I turned off the notifications. But the biggest problem of all is that a lot of that information is unvetted, biased, or just flat out incorrect. And so you have to spend time determining what's what with that information. If you want to see the exact steps that I took to purge a lot of this information from my life, go to my website, holyschmidt.com/purge. There I've listed the steps that I took to get rid of a lot of the information that's coming my way. It's a bit better if you are an information creator rather than an information consumer, because you spend a lot of time seeking out the information and discarding the obvious things that don't make a lot of sense. Still, when you give out your email address dozens and dozens of times every single week, well, that has a tendency to clog your inbox later on. And unfortunately, unsubscribe isn't what it used to be. So when you unsubscribe, oftentimes you have to think about what you're unsubscribing from, because they try to make it as difficult as possible for you to get off of the list. You have to actually select all of the things that you don't want to receive instead of just unsubscribing in totality. By the way, if you're dealing with one and done type of information where you have to give out your email address, I personally use a dedicated email just for junk. My first word is sortis, which means junk in Latin. A little passive aggressive, but still it gets the point across, and nobody who's scanning the list is actually going to figure that out right away. So for example, sortes@example.com. If you like this video, check out that video, 7 things you should stop doing by age 60. This is Jeff Schmidt, and I'll see you on the next video.
Holy Schmidt!